Paranoia Agent is a 13-episode TV series that aired in early 2004 and the only series ever created by the late Satoshi Kon. If you're familiar with Kon's previous work, you probably already have an idea where this is going. While he passed away in 2010 from pancreatic cancer, his work still remains as some of the best in the industry when it comes to surreal but grounded stories. What I mean by that is that while the shows themselves are generally pretty unsettling and use a lot of dreamlike imagery, they confront issues and settings in modern society that are usually pretty realistic, all things considered. Stuff like how people live, how it influences them, people deluding themselves to avoid responsibility, memory, and dreams. Satoshi Kon once said when discussing one of his movies, "If you look at a dream overall, it's very difficult to discern the meaning. However, as time goes on, there might be a certain meaning in the background." Movies that you can watch once and understand entirely, that is the type of movie I don't really like. There might be a certain part you don't quite understand, but there is a portion that rests in your heart. This is an accurate way of looking at Kon's work. As soon as you go into it, you should expect to not understand everything, or even a large portion of it the first time around. Maybe that's why I generally stuck to movies, considering it's a little more demanding of a task to rewatch an entire series, but either way it still rings true for Paranoia Agent. Like most of his other work, it's a pretty simple premise and idea presented in a unique and thought-provoking way. Tsutito Sadi is a character designer known for creating an animated dog named Moromi. She finds herself stressed and on the verge of a panic attack as the deadline for designing a new character grows closer, suffering from anxiety over her co-workers' distaste for her, along with being stuck in a rut, unable to come up with a new design. As her mental state worsens, she suddenly gets assaulted and bashed in the head by some kid on the States with a baseball bat, who we come to know as Little Slugger, or Shonen Bat, or Bat Boy if you're one of those weirdos who will only use the Japanese name in its literal form. Yeah, you know who you are, but you also told Dutstatsu, you piece of... From this point on, we follow the Little Slugger's victims, two detectives chasing him, and try to understand why he's doing this as the case itself slowly becomes less grounded in reality, while at the same time becoming more and more about a very grounded subject. The reason and the fact that started everything are completely realistic, while the presentation and events become more and more dreamlike as things continue. One of the things that really makes it stand out, like a lot of Satoshi Kon's work, is the editing. I'll admit I noticed a lot less towards the end, but he has a very unique style of doing scene transitions, very smoothly using things in the shot. It's a show that instead of focusing on traditional techniques that you'd see in live-action TV or movies, decides to focus on the animated medium and how it can use that to its advantage. Information is given in short frames and moments that in live-action would just be jarring. After watching this video, I highly recommend checking out Satoshi Kon Editing Space and Time by Every Frame a Painting. As an editor himself, he knows a lot more about the techniques than I do, and it's fascinating to see how deep Kon's methods go. But getting back on track, like I said earlier, Kon uses surreal imagery to create a realistic story. Paranoia Agent, like the title implies, is about paranoia and anxiety, the fear of taking personal responsibility for things that may or may not be within your control, and how they can spiral out of your reach. While the two detectives were my favorite characters, and they do become the focus in the second half, you can't really go in expecting a real detective story or you'll be disappointed. Detective work happens, but at the end, the resolution is much less simple than just arresting a killer. It's a story about paranoia spreading through the town, and a lot of the earlier episodes are separate but still connected. Back in my 2018 retrospective, I mentioned that an important thing in an episodic story is that the characters still grow and retain what happened to them in their personalities so that the show doesn't just become a mess of disconnected tales. While it doesn't do this in the same way most other stories do, it still manages it. Every episode of Paranoia Agent, except episode 5, that one's kinda weird, is important and contains information that, well, at the time you don't understand it, you eventually see how it contributes, and every episode ends up being important. The art is just as real as the tone is surreal. Characters look like real people, exaggerated or otherwise. People's appearance corresponds to their personality regardless of whether that makes them look good or not. Little bits of dream-like moments are sprinkled in with the real scenes, and it all just gives it a general sense of unease throughout the entire show. You'll see this a lot in Satoshi Kon's movies too. Something will look real and believable on purpose, so when it gets weird you feel a sense of unease, like everything just got yanked out from under you.
It's a showtime!
In the end, if you like surreal psychological anime that in the end focus on subjects like society and not wanting to accept reality, then you'll probably like it. It's very comparable to Serial Experiments Lane, and a few specific episodes are actually very reminiscent of Welcome to the NHK. And of course, if you like Satoshi Kon's other work like Perfect Blue or Paprika, you'll almost definitely feel the same way about this one. So should you watch it? Yeah, it's pretty good, especially if you really enjoy psychological pain and misery. I know I'm an expert on that. Otherwise, what did I watch Stool Days for?